Please be advised that this film contains content that may be distressing for some viewers. We kindly ask that all mobile phones are switched off for the duration and request that no part of the vigil be filmed. The vigil will be made available online at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, the 20th of November. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation.
Reading is a town of great diversity, of many cultures, backgrounds, lifestyles and identities. And we should all feel safe and welcome in our town.
Those with power are clearly afraid of us, and they should be. Their malevolent, oppressive, disgusting behaviour against women, against racialised minorities and against us is being called out. And they hate it. And so they hate us.
Can't understand why you would victimise a certain sector of the population because of being who they are, particularly if they're young people. And this year has been particularly bad for young people.
This country has slipped into a state where trans people are fearful for their lives, fearful for their safety, fearful for their livelihoods. This is not a surprise. This is not accidental. This is very, very deliberate. It's driven by politicians. It's driven by small but well-funded pressure groups. It's fed by the media, and it becomes a self-feeding machine. The media say something, the politicians repeat it, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Our lives are denied respect, and all too often we are treated as a game for media pundits and celebrities to practice their debating skills, not as real people with our own lives and struggles.
Still, I feel scared every time I use the men's bathroom in college. I keep my head down, get out as fast as possible. My heartbeat feels like I've run a marathon. I shouldn't have to feel this fear. I shouldn't have to watch my friends hide every day. They shouldn't have to be counting down each day until they can move out. We should be able to live, to be teenagers.
In this country alone, a suicide rate for trans people is approximately 48%. Let's call it what it is. That's half of trans or gender diverse identifying people who have attempted to take their own lives at least once. That stops today.
I was nearly one of those names a few years back in 2013. I couldn't cope. I was in an abusive relationship. I was hiding my true self from so many people. So, like so many, I tried to overdose on tablets and booze, but it didn't work. A while later, as I still felt like a freak, a weirdo, outcast, Billy no mates, I'd planned to jump. Luckily, it was late, and I was spotted by local police officers and pulled from the bridge. They got me the help that I needed.
Every time I open the front door, I think to myself, is today the day that something will happen? Will I be attacked? Will I come home? I get my news from independent media. I look at Twitter, I look at Facebook, and what I see scares me. It makes me petrified. It even makes me question myself. This year I have lost 2 friends to suicide. I know 2 more that have been raped. I can't say for certain that these were as a result of being trans, but I can't exclude the possibility.
The people whose names we say today are so much more than their deaths. They are someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's parent, someone's grandchild, someone's friend, someone's lover. They had lives that were beautiful, full of potential. They gave love and had hope for the future, futures that were taken from them.
A trans woman whom I dated at the time told me that while we had been doing perfectly normal things other couples do while out and about, she'd be continually looking over her shoulder. It wasn't long before I experienced hate firsthand. Passers-by would be making nasty comments and laughing at their wit. There would be shouting and screaming through car windows, but luckily nothing physical.
But I was almost beaten to death by a group of youths the day after Transgender Day of Remembrance 2021, which was ultra scary. I actually thought I was going to physically die that day.
Over the years, I've had to endure counselling, therapy, and medical examinations. I was even given psychological conversion therapy, which was deeply distressing and caused me a lot of pain.
Hate against the trans community is at an all-time high, especially if you're looking at government and the newspapers, the media in general, and it's an uphill battle. but fight we will.
Trans people have always been here. For as far back as records go, for as far back as civilizations go. Whether you identify as male, female, beyond the binary, non-binary, however you identify, you should have a right to live your life how you want. And I just want to take a moment to remember those people that were taken away from us too soon.
We live in a country where there is still a debate on what toilet I should be allowed to use. Whether I should be allowed to get married without going through insanely expensive and long-winded medical and legal processes. That stops today.
Most of us are just trying to live out ordinary, quiet lives, yet we constantly find ourselves being thrust into the spotlight of an uncaring and obsessive media as a form of clickbait to sell more copies or to get more subscribers, and never mind the harm it does to us and those around us.
Brianna's death has affected all of us. We've seen it coming for years and years, and we've told people it was coming. We know it could have been any of us, and we know that it's been many of us. Families of trans and non-binary people, this is what they've been scared of and fearing that will happen for so many years. Allies, you need to wise up, you need to speak up, and you need to stand up. Your apathy at what's happening to the trans and non-binary community needs to stop. You need to stop wondering whether there was something that you could have done. You need to stop wondering what you could do. And you need to start doing.
Organisations exist in Reading to offer support, but it requires people to reach out. And we as a community in Reading have organisations that are well placed and experienced to offer that support.
There are things that have made my life easier, but in the climate we live in, being trans in this country is fundamentally dangerous. When you're also a person of colour or a traveller or disabled or poor, then living in this country is a constant fight for survival.
We remember those that aren't with us anymore and fight in their absence. Fight so that one day the newspapers stop reporting the latest tragedy. Fight so that people my age and younger can imagine a future where they grow old, where they are happy.
Our community is not going underground. Quite the opposite. We keep winning in court. Our community is strong. It is that strength which brought us out of the shadows to where we are today, and it is that strength which will mean we win this thing.
I don't want to sit with the tears of sadness stinging my eyes as I hear of the horrific things done to my community, but I know that I will. I don't want to think of the potential, the years and the happiness taken from people who just wanted to be free to live their lives, but I know that I will. This is the reality that the trans community face.
Over the past 4 years, we've mourned more than 2,127 known individuals. Among them, 37 were from the United Kingdom, with the vast majority coming from Brazil, Mexico, and the United States. The global figures are deeply troubling. 27 lost in custody, 67 due to medical causes, 276 by suicide, 114 from unknown causes, and a shocking 1,643 due to violence.
Good evening. My name is Asifa Lahore. I'm a proud trans woman, and I'm also known as Britain's first out Muslim drag queen. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be your host tonight. Tonight we come together for Transgender Day of Remembrance 2024, a day where we remember those that we've lost in the past year, those that we've lost due to violence, bigotry, and hatred. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year around the world on almost every subject. But let's be honest, the rise in transphobia, the anti-trans rhetoric around the country and around the world is heightening with every moment that passes. During the Stonewall riots, transgender people were some of the first to throw those bricks and stones. And yet today, we are very much the niche hated of the LGBT+ community. Worldwide, we are being vindicted. We are being vilified for being who we are, for being visible. And it's why today, Transgender Day of Remembrance in November, but also Transgender Day of Visibility in March, why these days are important for transgender people to stand tall, stand proud, be seen, and be remembered. Right now, a young transgender person is probably most likely feeling scared, worried, anxious about the future. Are they able to live in this country where there's such transphobia, where there's such anti-trans rhetoric? As a person of color, racism is also on the rise. And a statistic recently I read that transgender people of color, their average age of death and passing is 35. I turned 41 this year, so I count myself lucky. Tonight, we will come together and we will remember those that we've lost. We will shine a light in hope, in solidarity, in equality and love for the future. And we will remind people that we need allies, that we need solidarity in order to make the world, a better place. You'll be hearing from speakers. You'll also be hearing entertainment, songs of joy, songs of expression. And during this time, I want you all just to take a moment to think about what it must be like for people that are transgender today, what it must be like to transition today, to not be able to be yourself, to not be able to speak your mind, even though you live in a country that is supposedly a free country. But I'd like you to take a moment and enjoy the rest of the showing.
On Transgender Day of Remembrance, we gather to honour those across the world who have lost their lives simply because they were transgender or non-binary. We stand in solidarity with the families and communities that mourn them, and we affirm that their lives, their stories, and their humanity will not be forgotten. Here in Reading, we pride ourselves on being an inclusive and welcoming town. Our council has implemented policies and partnerships that reflect our commitment to protecting all of our residents, including those from the transgender community. But as we commemorate this day, we also acknowledge that there is still much work to be done. The rise in transphobic hate crime, an 11% increase over the past year in England and Wales, is alarming and reflective of the negative rhetoric we so often see in the media. We as politicians and community leaders have a responsibility to set an example, to speak out against hate, and to actively create safe spaces for all. Allyship matters. each of us can learn how to be better ally to the trans community by supporting resources like the Trade Union Congress's Guide on Trans Allyship. It's important to recognise that many of the individuals we remember today face multiple layers of discrimination, being both transgender and members of the global majority. This intersectionality reminds us that justice for one must mean justice for all. Let us honour their memories, not just today, but in our daily actions. Together, we can build a society where everyone, regardless of their identity, feels seen, heard, and respected. Thank you.
We're here today to remember, to reflect, and to take action. The recent NHS Adult Gender Services in the UK Performance Report paints a deeply troubling picture of the state of care for trans people, non-binary and gender diverse individuals. Across the country, waiting lists are longer than ever and services are failing. Some face waiting times of up to 20 years just for an initial assessment. This is not just a failure of systems, but a denial of care that impacts lives in devastating ways. The report highlights the stark disparity in services between regions. In Wales, the Welsh Gender Services shows what is possible with proper care models, providing one clinic for every 1,712 trans individuals. Compare this to England, where only one clinic exists per 20,987 people. The report makes clear that nationwide crisis is unfolding, and without urgent reform, this system will continue to fail those who need it the most. We see several causes of failure in this report: a lack of staff, outdated service models, and inconsistent funding. Clinical staff numbers are insufficient, particularly those qualified to diagnose and treat gender dysphoria. In some clinics, diagnostic staff numbers have even decreased, despite the rising demand. These failures leave too many without access to care, with many being forced to turn to private services or self-medication in desperation. Yet there are clear solutions. The report calls for the adoption of an informed consent model of care, one that is delivered within primary healthcare settings. No longer should access be restricted to overstretched specialist services. Immediate reforms must simplify processes, increase the number of clinics, and align the system with international best practices such as the WAPS standard of care. Moreover, it calls for public inquiry into the potential discrimination within NHS gender services, a vital step in addressing the unequal treatment trans people face. We cannot allow the system to continue unchecked. As we remember those who have been lost, those who couldn't wait, let us stand united in demanding change. This isn't just about healthcare, it's about justice, respect, and dignity for all. Together we must push for a system that truly serves the trans community with the care they deserve. Thank you.
This year, as another year comes to an end, we are faced once again with the tragic reality that more trans people have lost their lives, whether through murder or by taking their own lives due to the intense pressures of living in a world that often refuses to accept them. Prejudice and discrimination against our communities continue to grow, making it increasingly difficult for many trans individuals to find a sense of safety and belonging. It's heartbreaking reality that we must confront year after year, and the weight of these losses cannot be overstated. Each life lost is a reminder of how much work still lies ahead of us in our fight for equality and acceptance. Yet amidst the sorrow, I found myself deeply honoured to be a part of a powerful project that seeks to honour and remember those who we have lost. I was invited to contribute to an artwork unveiled recently on the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square, called 1,000 Times in an Instant, by the artist Teresa Margolyes. This project is deeply significant to me as it brings together trans individuals from different backgrounds and countries, creating a bridge between our shared struggles and our resilience. In this artwork, participants, including myself, crafted Mexican death masks of our own faces. These masks are more than just representation. They are a tribute to those who are still here, standing resiliently in the face of adversity. They're also a reminder of those who can no longer stand beside us, having succumbed to violence, discrimination, or despair. These masks face the elements of nature, weathering the sun, the rain, and the wind, just as our community has weathered so many challenges over the years. They serve as a poignant symbol of both remembrance and resistance, standing firm in a public space that is often bustling with activity and yet all too often overlooks the struggles of the marginalised people. The artwork is particularly meaningful because it highlights the struggles of trans communities in both the UK and in Mexico. Our community is disproportionately targeted by violence, especially in regions like South America, where the rates of murder against trans individuals are among the highest in the world. However, in recent years, we have also seen a troubling rise in violence and discrimination right here within the UK. The involvement of trans people from both countries in this project serves as a powerful reminder that our struggles transcend borders and that solidarity is essential in our collective fight for justice. As we come together to remember those who have lost, we also stand in solidarity with those who are still fighting for their right to exist. To anyone who is struggling right now, to anyone who feels isolated, rejected, or invisible, I want you to know that there is hope and that there is support available to you. It is important to reach out for help, to connect with others who understand your experience, and to remember that you are not alone in this. You are special, you are important, and your life is valid, no matter what others may say or do. There are many organisations dedicated to providing support to the trans community and people, offering resources, counselling, and a sense of community. Finding a supportive environment can make all the difference in navigating the challenges that come with being true to yourself in a world that often struggles to understand. We all have something unique to bring to society, even if the contribution isn't always recognised or valued right away. It's our diversity, our creativity, and our resilience that makes us who we are, and these are the qualities that the world needs, even if it doesn't realise it just yet. Let us strive for a world where no one has to feel unsafe or unwelcome, simply for being themselves. Together, we can create spaces where trans lives are celebrated, respected, and valued, because every life is precious and every story deserves to be heard.
Recently, the stunning artwork that now adorns the 4th plinth at Trafalgar Square was unveiled. This was conceived and implemented by Teresa Margolyes, and we are here with more. who has been involved with this work for several years, both here and back home in Mexico. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, how you've been involved with the sculpture, and how it all came about.
Yeah. Hello, I am Mo, and I'm from Mexico. I met Teresa in Mexico. My friend Ana presented me Teresa, so maybe 2 years ago. So when Teresa arrives with me, I feel very solidarity with her because it's like a woman from my country, like an artist, and she tell me the project, no? And in this moment, I decide to support the project because I stay in the same feelings about the trans community in my country. So for me, it's a pleasure work with Teresa, like in a collaboration in the production of the pieces. So we make one about the piece with their hands. So this process is hard. It's not easy because when the people put casting in your face, sometimes it's not easy. You know, stay like in the more well moment, or it's difficult for you in front of your trauma. But it's beautiful in the same way because we stay in the process, take care of the feelings, and take care of the selves of my trans sister brothers and non-binary sisters and brothers. So in Mexico, we make the castings in my apartment, my studio of art. So it's very interesting, the process, because my sisters and brothers and trans non-binary brothers and sisters comes to my space, and we make the castings in my space. So the space, like my people waiting for the casting, is in my bed. So we have a hard conversations about the trans resistance in my bed. Also, sometimes my sisters come to the prison directly to my bed because it's a casting. And my community looks this project like a one day for work. It's very heavy speak about this because it's their face. And for me, it's important to speak about my community in this way. So also in Mexico it's heavy, but we find the form to connect with the community and put the casting in the more organic form. So I am happy to meet more about my community in Mexico and feel more connect in energy. Also in London, we make the castings here. So yeah, I find a lot of contrast in the community, but in the same way, the feelings about the trans resistance is the same. We stay fire for the rights, we stay fire for the square society. So the trans resistance in Mexico as in London is the same. And this is one beautiful thing I can find, and I am very in gratitude with you because it's not easy, the resistance in the world, but when you find other mirror, your community, you feel more strong and you say, okay, I can confront this. Maybe my everyday is difficult, but I have my community, and you start feeling more secure and safe. Also, when I arrived to London, I know speak English before. I learn more speak English here. So I feel alone when I arrive here. I don't have a lot links. In reality, no links here. So when I start the project, I find my links and I find more security for myself for stay here. And I said, thank you for this. So the process of the casting is a very beautiful process, and I think this is more of the art feelings. And I stay in very gratitude with Teresa for the conception about the piece, for interested about the memorial for Carla's, because Carla is a friend of Teresa. She murdered in Juarez. It's a border with the United States. She was killed with a stone, and it's very heavy because in Mexico the death is very quotidian. Every day you death. So yeah, this is I can tell you in the park in this moment.
I've heard several different interpretations about the sculpture and its meaning. Is there any proper way to view it? Is there, or do people just make of it whatever they will?
No, I think we have a lot of meditations in the process of this piece. Also, we think in the art wake up questions, but not bring answers. So this is I can say for you.
Okay. How did you react
to the various negative responses from right-wing and anti-trans sources?
Yeah, it's so bad. I think the society needs to understand more what is a trans, because when you don't understand, you only want skilled persons or also put a violence in other persons. But if you know what is a trans, you understand trans is a diversity. Trans is a looking other forms for creating other type of systems, more organic for yourself too. All persons have a difference in life. So I think if you know what is a trans, you can understand more about this and not put more violence in the world.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the situation in Mexico for trans and gender diverse people? And how does this affect you personally?
Yeah, thank you for questioning this. It's so important for me, visibility in my community in Mexico, because we stay in no easy moment. In this moment, we resist very heavy. Also, I can explain you with my experience. When I moved to Mexico City, it's the big capital in Mexico. I'm from my little downtown. I moved with anything. I only moved with my bag and 1 month for rent. And I arrived with my 2 sisters to Mexico City. And we have a hard time because we don't know more people in the city. We don't have work, we don't have a study, we don't have anything. So in this time, we're from a very hard times, but we stay together. And I find this feeling of the community, the support, to share a brain, you know? So I think it's very hard times, but in the same way, we stay in community. And this is more beautiful thing I can find in Mexico. The political situation obviously is hard. We stay fight for more rights, for more support, but in the society too. If you know our like sexual wish for the strike or all people, the people kill you. So I think it's important that people stop to sexualize bodies. So in Mexico, we don't have jobs. Also, more of my community stay make a sex work. Also for me, like an artist, it's difficult to find a space and visibility to my work. Sometimes I feel only like expropriate of my energy and my recourse, but not really like visibility. So this is one thing we find. We find more space and more links in the world for creating more energy. We don't want only like capitalist things, but we want security, food, and work. I think this is my community wish in Mexico.
So you just want what everybody else wants?
Yeah.
On this day, when we remember the hundreds of transgender and gender diverse people who have died around the world, who died through suicide, violence and neglect, can you please tell our audience anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, sure. I want to say to my community, thank you for exist and resist, because I know it's not easy walking in the streets sometimes or resisting your existence. But I say thank you because we open other doors for the new generations, for the new trans people. And also we can share the trans energy with other persons, and please show it's only diversity. Like we start in the park and all plants are diversity. So, and transmute. Transmute and diversity is part of the natura. Please to stop to try to control all things in the world. It's only natura. Your body merciful be in gratitude, in joy the world, and only be enjoy. So thank you for exist and resist, and please open your heart for share in community, share your thoughts. It's so important, share the thoughts, and yeah, trust in you and in your community.
Thank you, Mom.
To Frank, my best friend. I miss you so much, my dear friend. In gardens where your hands would tend, you planted fruit and veggies bright, each bloom a testament to your light. With love you crocheted hearts and coasters, creating warmth like gentle posters. Your laugh filled the air with cheer, echoing still I hold it near. And Cardi B, your favorite tune, that brings me memories that make me swoon. Every time Up begins to play, I think of you and I wish you stayed. I am Wednesday Spears and it's clear to see, proving this message is truly me. We mark this day to remember and say, your time here mattered in every way. So Frank, my friend, I hope you see how much you meant and still do to me. In every memory you still remain, a part of my joy, my tears and my pain. And I know I must go on alone. You always be my heart's true home. Forever in my thoughts until the end, you always be my best friend. For all our trans and non-binary friends and family that we have lost, we mark this day to remember you all, to reflect on the time you spent here, and to honor the light that you brought to this world.
I'm trans. Don't tell my parents. These were the words that a US middle school teacher read on a questionnaire that they had given to their new class to get to know the children better. The teacher happened to work in a state that required them to out trans kids to their parents. This teacher decided to ignore the law, keep the child's trans identity to themselves, and respect the child's plea for safety. This is a situation that we now face in the UK with the new schools guidance. As the American teacher said, since when do we want teachers to not care for their pupils? I hope this sentiment applies just as much to British teachers as it did to this American one. Today, trans youth face the lack of a safe space at school where they could be outed to uncaring parents. Even with supporting parents, they can no longer access internationally recognised best practice treatments through the National Health Service. This is because a government-implemented review of youth transgender healthcare in the UK was undertaken by someone eminently unqualified. Not only was the leader of this review inexperienced in gender identity issues, they were ideologically opposed to providing transgender people with suitable care. The objectives of the final report may have had some beneficial intentions, and yes, having several youth gender clinics across the country is a very good aim, but the conclusions are, without exception, based upon biased standards, misinterpreted or even falsified data. The report recommends that puberty blockers be restricted to only those who participate in a research project, a project that has not been specified nor funded. Why is this? Because they are dangerous? Not tested for transgender conditions? Or what? Puberty blockers are a well-known medication that has been used for decades, not just for gender dysphoria. They are not an artificial chemical compound. They are the natural chemicals the body produces to restrict the onset of puberty. Precocious puberty is when this process malfunctions, and blockers are prescribed to supplement the body's natural production. If they are so dangerous that a new research project is needed, why does this only apply to trans kids and not all kids? And why is it only British kids that are susceptible to this danger? And why does this not also apply to the fully 30% of medications prescribed daily for conditions they haven't been tested for? Of course, the research that shows the safety and effectiveness of blockers, both here and internationally, either wasn't written in English or was conducted in an ethical manner, not the ineffective double-blind method that Dr. Cass considers the only valid approach. Fully 95% of such research was downgraded, or in other words, ignored. These reports and papers show the effectiveness of a healthcare system that follows internationally accepted best practices. Some years ago, in the first of these talks, I used the phrase that I am tired of being debated about and not being included. Well, this is something else that has happened with this report. No LGBTQ+ or trans organisation was included in its production. So much for the NHS policy of nothing about us without us. Internationally, the reception has been widespread rejection. Bodies like WPATH, USPath, Yale University and many others, including now the BMA here in the UK and most recently the Japanese Health Authority, have identified the many failings in the research and findings throughout the report. There are examples of falsified or misleading evidence. Graphs that show exponential growth in referrals were edited to cut off just before the point where the figures plateau. Yet the report is written as if these figures continue to rise. False conclusions are drawn from misrepresented research. For example, the claim that brains are not fully formed until the age of 25. That comes from a research paper where the author said the age was arbitrary, chosen because there were no older participants in the study. More recent studies showed that the brain continues to develop throughout life, yet this research was used to argue that a person does not have the competence to make such decisions until they are 25. If this were true, should we not increase the age of majority to 25? Parents could perhaps turn to private healthcare, but this is expensive and is now outlawed. Parents face child endangerment charges and risk losing their child to care and facing prison themselves. This is an appalling state of affairs, and I am distressed to think of the damage this report is already causing and will continue to cause. And finally, remember the 16. In figures from the Tavistock Minutes, the only youth GIC until this year, in the 8 years prior to the Bell versus Tavistock case, which first blocked youth trans healthcare in 2020, there had been 1 suicide on the waiting list. In the 4 years since, despite the case being overturned on appeal and the block being partially lifted, that number has increased to 16. This 32-fold increase is too many, and how many more remain unreported? These children, and many others, are the victims of uncaring, ideologically driven policies imposed by people in power. The Cass report is just the latest in a series of self-serving reports intended to worsen the situation for trans people and further the othering of us. We, the trans community, and our friends and allies call upon this new government and all relevant institutions to completely and unreservedly reject the Cass report and to introduce changes to trans healthcare for all ages based on internationally recognised best practices and experiences.
Hi, my name is Lynn Jones, and I'm the Vice President of the Beaumont Society, the largest trans organisation based in the UK. Although we're based in the UK, we have members as far afield as Japan, Australia, across Europe, and North and South America. Our primary goal, as stated in our Constitution, is to provide mutual support for trans people and to communicate with and educate the wider population, professional groups and others about the transgender community. We're here today to talk about the Trans Day of Remembrance on the 20th of November, which started as a vigil in 1999 to honour Rita Hester, who lost her life to violence. From then until now, in 2024, violence and anti-trans bigotry has continued. In 2024, in the US, one survey estimates that about 80% of US-based trans people considered suicide, with 46 of those being trans or non-binary young people. A staggering 40% actually attempted suicide. In the UK, there has been a surge of trans people considering suicide since 2020. The reasons are many, but alarmingly, young people are the group where the rate has dramatically increased, coinciding with NHS waiting lists growing completely out of control, causing those waiting for surgery to become desperate. Anti-trans bigotry, TERFs, massive NHS waiting lists, and recently the Conservative government using the trans community as a diversionary tactic to distract from their economic failings, the broken NHS, corruption, have all added to the trans people's anxiety, worries and stress. In the UK, the EHRC issued guidance stating that trans women could be barred from female-only toilets and changing rooms. For trans people who need to use the toilet, and especially for those less confident, gender-neutral toilets have always been a good option that protected us from discrimination. The government's aim was for us all to use the toilet that matched our assigned gender at birth. Imagine having to go to a men's toilet in a posh frock and high heels. It's unbelievable. The government didn't think this through. Their argument was that there were attacks in female toilets by trans women. I personally have used female facilities for years, and I have never seen so much as a raised voice. It's just another example of being turned against. Let's attack, intimidate, and fuel the fire against the nasty trans community. I recently attended a conference in Liverpool, hosted by Spirit Level, an LGBTQ+ organisation. One of the topics discussed by a panel of 5 people was the fetishization and sexualization of our community. Many believe that being trans makes us up for it or an easy lay. The attendants of this conference were various ages ranging from people in their 20s to the late 70s, and included one person who was 80 years of age, a trans woman. I think the group from the Beaumont Society certainly pushed up the average age quite a bit. The interesting thing was that people of all ages found when visiting websites like Facebook, trans sites, or anywhere where there's a chat feature, the first thing people are often asked is, what are you wearing? Or what sexual practices are you into? It's as though we are seen as playthings or objects of others' enjoyment. Unfortunately, there is a section of some trans sites where people, mainly men, put on stockings and heels for a sexual thrill. That isn't being trans, that's a sexual fetish. Unfortunately, the public only hears about these sorts of experiences, which are sometimes highlighted in the press. As a result of this, we are all painted with the same brush, seen as though we're all dressing up for some perverted sex act, and it's all like Rocky Horror or something similar. In reality, we just want to be our authentic selves, living ordinary lives, shopping, going out with friends for a meal or drinks, and just being who we really are. Cis women are taught from a very early age to remove themselves from the unwanted, predatory approaches, such as by blocking a user on Facebook for inappropriate comments. As trans people, we have to learn these things. All we want to do is be treated with respect, not special treatment, just be the same as anyone else. Of course, we all like to be liked, we all love to be loved. There are many people in the trans community that I know who are in loving relationships, so it's not all doom and gloom. The most important thing in our community is that we support each other no matter where we are on our journeys, whether dressing occasionally behind closed doors, going out but not wanting to transition, or being fully transitions. We all experience dysphoria, and we are all trans. In September 2001, I worked in the IT department of Deutsche Bank within the World Trade Center in New York City. On the 11th of September, as the first plane hit one of the towers, after the ceiling fell and collapsed in on us, we managed to escape safely. That day, around 3,000 people died. Like me, all we did that day was go to work to earn money to look after our families, pay bills, and do their jobs. I became a 9/11 survivor. That day fundamentally changed me, as it would anyone. From then on, I vowed to help others as much as I possibly could, whenever and wherever possible. On this Trans Day of Remembrance, we should keep similar things in mind. All we are trying to do is to live our lives and be who we are, nothing more, nothing less. We don't choose to be trans, we simply are. We are not on this earth for a long time. The trans community needs to support one another and be there for one another. JFK once said, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet, we all breathe the same air, and we all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. Let's support our global trans community with as much effort, enthusiasm, and love as we can. Thank you.
Well, it's surreal that a year ago I was sat in this very same seat. A real lot has changed. We've got a new government. Let's just see how that pans out and how that is. I'm finally on HRT, having had to wait over 5 years or more, give or take. And it's sad, and I'm going to say a trigger warning in front of this. Unfortunately, 2 of my beautiful trans sisters have taken their own life, siblings, through bullying. It's tragic enough in itself, but when one of the family members just posts the news on Facebook to let people know the loss, the online trolls went straight for the family, saying things like, good, one less freak in the world, which I find rude, inconsiderate, and downright inhumane. I believe that a lot of hatred comes from that word fear, or that position of fear, false education appealing real. I was privileged enough to be involved, and I'm involved in what's going to be going to the Arboretum, reference the LGBT memorial for anybody that served, pre the ban and post the ban. And it's such an honour. I'm just one of the many team, I'm not all of it. And plus next year, in 2025, Portsmouth is going to be hosting National Pride, which is incredible, because that coincides with 25 years since the ban of LGBT plus people serving in the armed forces being lifted. So again, that's going to be a very, very poignant year. Since my last video, I've had the honour and the privilege of laying a wreath for fighting with pride at the D-Day stone in Southsea for the 80th commemoration. And not long ago, and I'm not getting into politics, but not long ago, that act would have been not accepted or probably not encouraged. It was very powerful that nobody batted an eyelid and it was just accepted. Attending events like Portsmouth Pride, Armed Forces Day, and others helps raise awareness of what is and what isn't, and what is and what wasn't illegal in terms of being LGBT when you were serving in the forces. A beautiful issue is that it doesn't no longer create a contentious issue. And when younger ones ask, they have no concept of it, so that's beautiful. I want our LGBT community to stand together in solidarity against hatred and issues that surround our politics and policies, but I won't go into them because that's not my role. I will end on this. If you shout at me, I'll shout back. Hit me, and I'll have to make sure you hit me first because I don't want to be accused of violence. I'll hit you back. Leave me alone and I will offer you the same grace and the same honour to live your life the same as I want to live my life. I don't like labels, as they can divide, no different than when we segregated people who of a certain pigmentation used to have to sit at the back, so couldn't go back of buses or public transport and couldn't go into certain venues. So if you insist on me giving labels, I'm a 55-year-old, nearly 56-year-old human who happens to be a trans female, a veteran of some time from 1985 to 2015, a friend, a mentor, and an amazing honour to be a mentor to trans siblings. Over the last year, I've learned that asking for help and support isn't a weakness, it's a massive strength. And I would encourage anybody that is struggling with any issues, whether that be emotional, physical, or spiritual, please reach out. God bless, and just live one day at a time, your authentic self. D.
At the Conservative Party conference, Rishi Sunak stated, "We shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That is just common sense." His remarks sparked protests from LGBTQ+ organisations, which criticised him for dismissing gender identity complexities and encouraging transphobic sentiments. Home Secretary Suella Braverman also criticised LGBTQ+ rights, focusing on trans individuals. She argued that LGBTQ+ asylum seekers should not automatically be granted asylum and criticised police involvement with the queer community at Pride events. This led to widespread backlash, with critics accusing her of undermining legitimate community concerns. Sunak reinforced his stance on trans identities, claiming that misgendering should be considered common sense. These comments alienated the trans community, implying that respecting trans identities is optional rather than a basic right. Conservative MP Rachel McLean faced backlash after she shared a social media post that described Green Party candidate Melissa Polton, a trans woman, as a man who wears a wig and calls himself a proud lesbian. Critics, including Polson, labelled McLean's comments as transphobic and divisive. In January, the UK government issued school guidance allowing teachers to block children from socially transitioning without parental consent. This policy was criticised for disregarding the well-being of trans youth. Olu, a non-binary 14-year-old, expressed frustration, asking, "Why is the government telling teachers to make my life harder? Why does the Prime Minister hate me?" Critics raised concern about increased bullying and marginalisation of trans children in schools. Lee Anderson, the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, called for the party to focus its campaign on culture wars and trans debates. His remarks were seen as inflammatory, contributing to a rise in hate crimes against trans people. Leaked draft guidelines proposed changes to civil service policies, allowing gender-critical beliefs to be openly expressed without penalty, and restricting access to single-sex facilities for those holding a gender recognition certificate, which only 1% of trans people possess. LGBTQ+ advocates criticised this, warning it legitimised transphobic views and endangered trans employees. In a related incident, Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and the CEO of the Equality and Human Rights Commission pushed the Financial Conduct Authority to drop plans allowing self-identification for gender for trans women. The move was condemned as transphobic by SCA staff and LGBTQ+ advocates. In March, NHS England published its clinical policy on puberty-suppressing hormones. This sets out that puberty-suppressing hormones are not available as a routine commissioning treatment option for treatment of children and young people in England who have gender incongruence or dysphoria. This policy, part of the wider changes to transgender healthcare, was criticised for harming trans youth by limiting access to gender-affirming healthcare. Following the release of the Cass review, the UK government confirmed it would maintain restrictions on puberty blockers for minors. Trans rights advocates condemned this, accusing the government of using the review to restrict gender-affirming healthcare. Reports also emerged of an increasing number of trans people leaving the UK due to the hostile environment. Trans individuals, including Michelle Snow and Kate Anderson, described feeling unwelcome and erased in their own country, blaming the government's policies and rhetoric. Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch launched a call for examples of organisations using incorrect guidance on single-sex spaces. Critics argued this further stoked fears around trans people accessing public facilities. The Conservative Party solidified its stance on defining biological sex in the Equalities Act and banning gender identity teaching in schools, drawing comparisons to the infamous Section 28 laws. The UK general election saw the Conservatives focus heavily on protecting biological sex in law. Their campaign included changes to the Equalities Act to restrict access to gender-affirming spaces and a ban on puberty blockers. Rishi Sunak reiterated his stance, stating, "A man is a man and a woman is a woman." Labour also supported the ban on puberty blockers, justifying it based on the Cass Review's recommendations. Although Labour had historically been seen as an ally to LGBTQ rights, their position on restricting access to gender-affirming care drew criticism from trans advocates. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats and Green Party took a more progressive stance, advocating for reform of the Gender Recognition Act and opposing the restriction on puberty blockers. The Green Party emphasised legal recognition for non-binary individuals and access to gender-neutral spaces. Smaller right-wing parties like Reform UK opposed trans rights, promoting policies that would restrict gender identity teaching in schools and ensure single-sex spaces were based on biological sex. Overall, the election saw trans rights weaponised across the political spectrum, with the Conservatives and right-wing parties taking an overtly transphobic rhetoric, while Labour faced criticism for not fully supporting trans-inclusive policies. Meanwhile, progressive parties stood in opposition, but their voices were often overshadowed by the louder culture war narrative. On the 12th of June, Workers' Party candidate Jodie McIntyre referred to the trans community as a danger to society during a campaign event. His remarks were condemned by other political candidates and LGBTQ+ organisations, reflecting the increasing use of anti-trans rhetoric by fringe political groups. In July, Prime Minister Keir Starmer responded to a question by J.K. Rowling, stating that trans women with a gender recognition certificate do not have the right to access women-only spaces. Starmer ruled out self-identification for trans people and confirmed he would continue blocking the Gender Recognition Reform Bill in Scotland. Later in the month, a High Court ruling upheld the government's decision to ban puberty blockers for minors. Trans rights organisations condemned the ruling as further restricting healthcare access for trans youth. The EHRC also released guidance clarifying that employers could exclude trans people with a GRC under specific conditions, prompting criticism from LGBTQ+ advocates. NHS England extended the emergency ban on private prescriptions for puberty blockers by 3 months. The ban, originally introduced to limit access for minors, drew backlash from transgender right groups who argued it severely restricted essential healthcare for young trans people. Data revealed an 11% rise in transphobic hate crimes over the past year, with over 4,700 incidents recorded in England and Wales. This increase was linked to political rhetoric and media portrayals of trans issues. Several senior officials resigned from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, citing concerns over the organisation's increasingly transphobic direction. Critics claimed the EHRC were being influenced by gender-critical views, further marginalising the trans community. A contestant on the new series of Big Brother said in his introduction video, "It's all well and good if you want to use certain pronouns, I get that. It gets a bit confusing sometimes when people are identifying as a spoon or whatnot, leading to outrage from viewers." Over the past year, trans rights in the UK faced escalating political attacks, restrictive policies and rising hate crimes, further marginalising the community and deepening societal divisions. Yet, in the face of adversity, love unites us all, reminding us that compassion and acceptance are stronger than hate.
Hi, I'm Helen Belcher. I head up a not-for-profit company called Transactual, and I also tried to be the MP for Reading West and Mid Berkshire this July. Trans Day of Remembrance is when we remember and commemorate those trans and non-binary people who we have lost this year. Each year, we remind ourselves that together we are strong and that we need to support those who don't feel so strong. We've had another tough year, with further restrictions on healthcare for young trans people despite a change in government, and continued questions across the media about whether trans people, trans women in particular, should be allowed to live and function in our society as who we understand ourselves to be. These debates can be terrifying, but at Transactual we are building support in the NHS, in Parliament, and in parts of the media. What those who push these discussions are trying to do is strip us of our humanity and our joy. So we must continue to remind ourselves and each other that we are human, we have a right to exist, and we are loved. And as we remember those who we've lost this year, let us also remember that we are people, no matter how we are portrayed. Stay strong and keep safe.
This is a tribute to my dear friend who passed away this month. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be alive here today. I'll first recite this poem in our native tongue to honor her. Then I'll recite the translation. يا شمس كريحان بلادي كنت زاهية وكشمسها في ضحاها كنت تشرقين يا ابنة سنحان يا شمس البادية طوبى لك كم كنت تشقين للحب كنت تواقة وباثية كريمة معطاءة كنت لا تكلين يا شمس كم كنت من الحياة راجية لخبز أمك وحضنها كنت ترثين بئس العالم الذي أضحى بك باكية من الشوق والضياع كنت تأنين فبئس الحياة العاتية وبئس القوم المتسببين ضل بك السبيل تائهة عن الله وملائكته كنت تبحثين ورحلت عنا فيا لها من فاجعة يا شمس نورك في الأفق يلوح شامخا حية أنت رغم الأعادي لا لن ولم تغيبي عن بالي يوما في القلب عزيزة قدرك عالي بت بالقرب من أمك نائمة فاطمئني وقري عينا ونامي O Shams, you were vibrant like the basil of my country, and you shone like the sun at noon. O daughter of Sanhan, O son of the desert, blessed are you, how you toiled. You were eager and fervent for love. You were generous and giving. You were tireless. O Shams, how much you were hoping for from life. For your mother's bread and embrace you were mourning. What a miserable world that made you cry. From longing and loss you were lamenting. So miserable this cruel life is, and miserable are the people who caused your pain. You lost your way wandering, for God and His angels you were looking, but good grief, you have left us. O Shams, your light on the horizon is waving high. Alive you are despite the enemies. No, I will not, and you have never been absent from my mind. In my heart, dear, your status is high. Now you're spending the nights sleeping next to your mother, so rest assured, be content and sleep. Thanks for listening.
In recent years, we've witnessed a devastating rise in suicide rates among transgender youth, especially those on NHS waiting lists. As of August 2022, over 26,000 adults were waiting for their first appointment in gender clinics, with 23,500 waiting more than 18 weeks. Approximately 7,600 children were in the same situation, over 6,000 of whom had also waited over 18 weeks. This crisis began with the Bell v. Tavistock ruling, which severely restricted access to gender-affirming care for those under 16 years of age. And despite claims of safety, the reality is really grim. The Cass review ignored all the horrifying impact of these restrictions. Why didn't Dr. Cass ask a single trans person for input on the report? Why did they exclude any clinicians or researchers with experience working in the trans community? Why were 98% of studies disregarded to reach conclusions about gender-affirming hormones? If Cass's intentions were truly in the best interest of the trans community, we would not be asking these questions. The project and the Cass report altogether is rooted in transphobia, and Hilary Cass, along with everyone involved, will have a lot of trans blood on their hands. Before 2020, there was just one suicide amongst transgender youth on NHS waiting lists in 7 years. But after the ruling, that number skyrocketed to 16 in just 3 years. And these are the numbers we know about. And this isn't just data. These are real lives lost, each filled with potential and hope. Whistleblowers tried to sound the alarm, but their voices were also silenced. Our children are suffering, facing pain so profound that for some, the only escape they see is to end their lives. Their families live in fear, terrified of what they might find behind closed doors. We can't afford to ignore these truths any longer. We must confront the reality that far too many young trans people are slipping away, their struggles unrecognized. It's time to speak out, share these stories, and demand change. We really must fight for their rights to exist and thrive. Trans rights are human rights.
It began in shadows. A cold wind whispered through the cracks of doors, where headlines tore apart our lives, calling us fractured, wrong, erased by force. Each morning felt like fighting storms. As rights we fought for cracked undone, and fear took root in many hearts. Shaking foundations we'd just begun. The Cass report came like a knife, cutting deep, stoking debates, while we became statistics, numbers, reduced to charts that decided fates. They asked what was best for us, without our voices at the table, as if our bodies could be questioned like we were fictions, myths, unstable. The streets grew colder, hollow with words too sharp, too loud, echoes of a world unsure of who we are or why we're proud. But through the fear, through the noise, we gathered where the fight was tough. Trans rights are human rights, we cried, as if the truth wasn't enough. The government and right-wing press, they tried to bend us, twist our name, but every smear they threw our way was just a spark that fed our flame. For love unites, we held each other and raised our hands side by side in protest that reclaimed the streets. Our truth was something we could not hide. In every tear, a seed was sown of strength that no law could deny. For in our bones we carry flames that won't be smothered nor erased. The rhetoric may try to crush us, but we will rise, we will resist. In love's embrace, our truth defended. We are not numbers, we exist. Trans rights are human rights, we say, not just in anger, but in pride. Our truth will never fade away. With every step we stride side by side. The year may try to break our spirit, but look around, see how we stand, an unbroken chain of love and fire, with futures burning in our hands. The road is long, the sky unsure, but together we carve our place. With every breath and every word, we write ourselves, we shift the space. Though the world may try to silence us, we rise in power, bold, alive. Love unites, this truth unshaken. Our rights, our lies will always survive.
I'm Adam, and I use they, them, and say, them pronouns. I'm trans, non-binary, and agender, and I have been a trans activist for many years. As we observe Trans Day of Remembrance in 2024, we mourn the hundreds of individuals who over the last year have been murdered because of transphobia. The annual statistics that are released only include reported murders, which means that the actual number of murders is higher. This is compounded by the increased prevalence of completed suicides in our community. The statistics show how humanity is failing us. But we, as a community, surviving and thriving, can be the best of humanity. We remember each and every individual, even the nameless. Today and every day, you are in our thoughts. Hand in hand, we need to keep each other strong, without gatekeeping and without violence. Because TERFs continue to spout biological determinist nonsense on whatever platforms they occupy. Because the Labour government continues the Conservatives' legacy of infringing on the rights of the trans community. Because our community's future is under attack. Over the last 12 months, our trans youth have endured legal challenges with the publication of the non-statutory guidance for gender questioning children, the CAS review, and the now extended ban on puberty blockers for trans youth. We need to stand with our trans youth whose legal and bodily autonomy is being taken away from them. This year, like previous years, Brazil and Mexico have seen the highest rates of trans murders in the world. Earlier this year, I had the privilege of working with various liberation movements across Mexico and Central America, which provided me with deeper insights into the nuances of transness in these contexts. I reflected on my own privileges of being trans in the UK and how this differs greatly in contrast to Mexico. In June 2024, I played my part whilst in Mexico, helping organisations take action against the Mexican government due to the high rates of trans femicides. By July, the Mexico City government passed legislation to make trans femicide a crime in its own right, with a penalty of up to 70 years imprisonment. A step in the right direction, but ultimately, this legislation will do nothing to challenge the patriarchal cis-heteronormativity which permeates society. An even more recent reminder of my time in Mexico was being one of the 726 faces in Teresa Margola's fourth plinth sculpture named Mil Veces un Instante. Exhibited prominently in Trafalgar Square for the next 2 years, it seeks to be a beacon for our community, as well as a stark reminder that some of those faces on the fourth plinth may already no longer be with us. I'd like to finish by reflecting on one of the most prominent people who took part in the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, an event that acted as a spark which enabled the LGBT+ liberation movement to gain worldwide recognition. Martha P. Johnson, a black trans woman, was a pioneering activist who inspires so many of us. Yet, black trans femmes make up the majority of those murdered as a result of transphobia, often compounded by trans misogyny and racism. We must stand up with our community and all of its intersections. We must stand against all forms of oppression. I won't stop taking action, and neither should you, because every death can be prevented.
Thank you to our distinguished speakers for their words. We now come to the segment where we remember those that we've lost this past year. Each name will be displayed on screen, and we invite you to say their name. Say it out loud powerfully. And remember that they were loved, valued, and above all, they were cherished. Let's also take a moment to remember those that the names we do not know, those that passed unknown. Even though they passed unknown, they will never be forgotten. There is also a trigger warning during this segment because we will be displaying the causes of their passing. If this affects you, then please step away temporarily. I now would like to introduce the Thames Valley Gay Chorus, who will be performing tonight alongside us at Reading Rep Theatre.
There's a rainbow waiting to light
We would like to mark the names that we have lost with a minute's silence. Please join us. As we draw to the end of the evening, we would like to extend our gratitude to everybody who has made this Transgender Day of Remembrance a memorable event. Thank you to the distinguished speakers for their powerful and thought-provoking words. A special thank you to the Thames Valley Gay Chorus for your beautiful sound, your beautiful voices. You've really touched and inspired us all tonight. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to the Reading Biscuit Factory and the Reading Rep Theatre for generously letting us use your venues to record tonight. It's been a challenging year that's seen much anti-transgender rhetoric. And we've come here tonight to remember those that we've lost and at the same time build hope for the future. Now is the time for everybody to come together in solidarity in the name of love, happiness, acceptance, and equality. We need allyship now more than ever. During these times where up and down the country, throughout the world, we're having anti-transgender rhetoric, let's create a world together where every transgender person can live freely, happily, and safely. Lastly, thank you to everybody here tonight. I invite you to stand together with us as I sing this last song with the Thames Valley Gay Chorus. Stand with us, stand by me.